With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome back, friends and allies, to the New Year's edition of the Exploring More podcast. Talking about resolutions and rituals, routines, how to set into that, how to move into spaces of solitude, reflection, so that, you can move in another direction. You can engage your will. And there's a beautiful dance, SJ, between my will and my desires, right? Paul says it in Romans 7, the things I want to do, I don't. Mm-hmm. Things I don't want to do, I do.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because I think myself included, my understanding of that passage is it's all about why you're a sinner, why you sin and do things that you don't want to do. And it's not that it's not about that, but I think there's nuance that can be found there in the things. There's a desire of your heart, for example, to journal every day out of the year. So why do I find it so hard not to do that?
Right.
Even though I know it's going to produce intimacy with God.
And to add the enemy to that.
Yeah.
And if the enemy has the ability to put things in the way, distractions, stuff like that. The other thing you said about Romans 7 that's fascinating is Paul really doesn't ever call himself a sinner, but he says he more reflects on the power of sin in his life. Mm-hmm. And that he actually disassociates with it, that this thing at work in me is not me.
Yeah, everybody goes to 1 Timothy, right? I mean, I think it's 1 Timothy. Of sinners, I'm of who I am chief, and 1 Timothy 2.
So the point, though, that we're making is this is hard to do. Slow down. Mm-hmm. Find third gear. Ask some questions.
Live curiously.
Oh, great phrase. Live curiously. Yeah.
Anyway, got an interesting story with my buddy, Craig Mayhew. Shout out to Craig. I know he listens to the podcast. So I'm out to dinner for my birthday earlier in December with my friend Craig Mayhew and his wife Heidi and my wife Sherry. We're just catching up on a bunch of stuff, and we get about halfway through the dinner, and Craig looks at me, "So, it's your birthday. What do you dream about for the next year of your life?" And I was like, wow, that's one of those questions.
Can you pass the salt?
Yeah.
Like we're going there?
I'm dreaming about the cheesecake that I know is coming. Mm-hmm. But it was really interesting to think about, as we were talking about living curiously and being inquisitive, and you were talking about, here's what I want, God, what do I want? And the practical of, I want to be more in shape, or I want to succeed financially, I want to have a better relationship with whoever it is, that's great. But that deeper question, really, he told me a story, and the reason he asked me this question, he was with a group of younger guys, all, 17, 18, up to about 25 years old. Asked this group of guys, what do you dream about for your life? Silence. None of them could come up with anything. It was all like, what's the next thing in front of them?
I wonder if I could have.
I want to get a job. I want to get this. I want to do this.
I might have been in the same boat.
Yeah, I thought about that too. So it just provoked me to think, like, what are my dreams? Even at, I just turned 51, right? So I'm not in the fourth quarter, but I'm in the third.
Late in the third.
Maybe late in the third. Who knows? But still, I'm not at the end of the road. What dreams do I have?
Right.
And even as we're talking about in the new year, which listeners, you'll hear us talk more and more about it, this Elder Sage initiative, where we're going towards recruiting and going after the hearts of men that are in this fourth quarter, in this sage stage
60s,
of life.
70s, early 80s. Yeah.
Asking them, what are you dreaming about,
mm-hmm.
At 73 years old, or whatever it might be. So it was a really interesting and good question.
Yeah, it is. And I think you're onto something too about we just kind of get trained to deal with the next mile marker or the next, when I'm good, I can live outside of that 3-day window. And we've been friends a long time. As a one, my nature and the way I'm particularly wired.
He's referring to a type 1 on the Enneagram.
Type 1 on the Enneagram.
Yep.
I'm a vision guy. I mean, I'm almost on autopilot for 120 days out.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it has to do with our mission and what do we need? What's it look like? Because frankly, I don't like getting snuck up on.
No.
I don't like being ill-prepared.
Right.
Or not assessing a situation in terms of what do we need to do. But even what do we need to do from here to there is preceded by where do we want to be?
Mm-hmm.
In my responsibilities, opportunities within Zoweh, it is most of the time kind of at the helm and captaining vision, mission. But I have an incredible team of people who help me with strategy. How are we going to get there? That's the last part, right? The first part, and I'm talking about us now back as individuals, and you're talking about with Mayhew and his audience. Where do you want to be?
That's right.
The destination has to be somewhat determined first before how are we going to get there? But how am I going to get through the day is kind of the normal gravitational pull of tyranny of the urgent, right? And everything, can be and feel urgent. It was funny. You said this yesterday and you said it just in passing. We were talking, catching up. It was in the afternoon, and you said, yeah, we checked a lot of boxes today.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew what you said and what you meant because it took us about 3 weeks to make the boxes.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's a great example of some things that we had set out to do, but they took time, to get there. And then we were finally able to, and you know how it goes. You check those boxes and you actually cash them in for new boxes.
For the next box.
Yeah. What does this lead to?
Right.
But in this idea of end of year, let's finish our time with some of these questions and this posture of, let's make it really, really practical. Like, this is one of those things, if it is to be, it's up to me, is actually okay. This is a thing. Your will needs to be engaged. And if you're going to get solitude, you're going to have to fight for it. So we carry their calendars in our pockets now. We aren't daytimers anymore. So look at your calendar. When?
Right.
When between, today and January 4th, 5th, when could you get a couple hours where you could get somewhere? Be uninterrupted. That's a challenge right there.
No
but
doubt.
The year's coming. And with it, the miles per hour is the current. The current is a better word. The current of the river is going to sweep you into the new year.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, where? You got to paddle?
Yeah. Are you wading? Are you paddling? Are you going to be in a
Or
kayak?
are you flailing?
Yeah. Are you dog paddling?
Right. Even in a river that's moving, and we've been on a few, there's certain obstacles in the river, but they're the places where the jetties are.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually where you can park your kayak or your raft and find the current actually letting you be still as it backwashes and puts you in a place of, okay, take a breath, take some time. It's there that you can almost hide out. So first of all,
have a picnic.
First of all, you got to schedule it, as silly as that sounds.
Oh, what do you mean by that is intentionality?
Yeah, you got to
And let me say too, we started off this podcast by talking about, this exercise looking like journaling. Doesn't have to.
No.
Our friend Tom Benner, he's been on the podcast. He's a big fan of soaking prayer.
Mm-hmm. Sitting
still, listening, having prophetic words read over him. Graham Cook does a great job of that. Look him up on YouTube.
Yeah.
So anyway, it can look a number of different ways. It's not just journaling that we're talking about. What we're talking about, though, is being intentional about being intentional.
You ever have this happen to you, SJ, where you have a thought, you're in bed, you're still, you're calming, you're lowering into, ending the day, and your mind starts to move in a direction, and you actually have some really good thoughts, and you make the mistake, I'm going to call it a mistake of, I got to write that down in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Nope.
It's just gone. What was it?
75%
of
the time.
To write something down.
So, yes, having a journal, but you might want to get a little sticky notes and notepads around. So back to your point of this solitude, take a walk, but take something to write something down with, because there's a difference between reflecting and having an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Having an idea is where it starts, and then reflecting on that idea or these questions that we're going to ask, that's where it has a chance to kind of get in the soil of your heart, go a little deeper, and you've collected it.
Yeah.
You've collected it, and now you're hanging on to it, and it's actually hanging around because you've made an effort to, record it. It's that important. In my writing, I do it all the time. Kind of have one of these little pocket field manual things. And I wrote this the other day. I wasn't planning on sharing this.
Literally, listeners, let me just paint the picture for you. Michael just pulled out this little billfold thing. It's about the size of a cell phone, and it's got a pad of paper inside.
Yep.
And inside of that, he pulls out what looks like, I don't know, the back of a bill envelope or something that you wrote some stuff on.
I wrote some stuff on, yeah. So I said, I just wrote this down, and it was one of those that I had to get written down so that I
or it was going to be gone.
Wouldn't forget. And it's still a little rough, but here's the concept that most of my great ideas, I have to confess, I really believe are with God. Like God is at work, most of my great ideas, but not all of the ideas that haven't worked out in the way that I wanted them to are just me, meaning God has led me into things that haven't worked out to show and teach me something better.
Oh, yeah. Or something we never knew we were going to find.
Right.
Sure. So not all your good ideas are God's, and not all your bad ideas are yours.
Yeah. And I'm not even sure at this moment, this was a few days ago, and I'm using it as an example. I'm not sure what posture I was in that had me feeling and thinking that.
Yeah.
But it was one of those, we use this phrase, SJ, it dawned on me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you should probably write down things that dawn on you.
Whatever it is.
There's some God, Holy Spirit engagement in those kinds of moments. And so the practice that I'm after for our friends and allies is the practice that I'm pursuing. And it's aware, awake, consciousness, surveillance, paying attention. That's when resolutions have a chance to become routine, become rituals in the good way, and you discover something that works for you, and you then employ it into your life, into your day-to-day. Now, there's another thing that happens. It's happened to me a few times, and the backwoods where I take the dogs, and that's a nice break for me a couple times a day, just getting that 15 minutes with them out there. So, but it has been it's been an environment where I take my pad, paper, my little field manual, field book, in case God says, hey, I want to dictate something to you, you better write this down.
Yeah.
Or your phone, you can do your notes, but
yeah, that's what I do. But
you got to be careful with phones because,
before you know, you're looking at an email.
That's right, man. You can get distracted.
Yeah.
But I do it with notes on my phone too. But I remember there's been times where I've gone out there in those woods, and it's kind of a place that I encounter God, meet with God, walk with God. He might dictate some things, ponder. I find I have to get still. I have to stand still more often than, like, have you ever walked with somebody and talked with them, or talked and walked? You can do it, but it's not the same as sitting across from you, if we're having a cigar, talking, and just seeing your face, engaging that way. I think that's a better way to have conversations to discuss. And I find it's true with God too. When I'm still,
mm-hmm.
I'm a little more receptive. I'm paying a little more attention. And for me, I actually speak out loud in some of these places of solitude because my mind is a bit of an unruly place.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about getting out of that confinement of just my mind and getting into speaking out loud that it feels more conversational. It is more conversation. Does that make sense?
I mean, we've talked about this in the context of prayer. I mean,
Right.
Praying out loud. You're praying and you're hearing the words that you're praying. It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've had times out there where we'll take a break after this, but I can only describe it as he's not there. Now, we know God is with us.
Yeah.
But I'm describing in this ritual, in this habit of meeting him out there or meeting him I have a chair that is my space
Kind of a go-to.
in the morning, coffee,
Mm-hmm.
my Bible, a couple colored pens. And, I get into some routine of listening to a few things and reading a few things and then step in or go out in the woods and take the dogs back out. But I've had the encounter where he's really said, I want you to find me in other places.
Mm.
So he's breaking the routine.
This is becoming too convenient
He's
for you,
breaking the
Michael,
rhythm.
right?
Yeah, that I want
Yeah.
you to. I know that's been inspired at times in my life at different times by, there's a line in the Chronicles of Narnia where Aslan says to the children before they leave Narnia, and he says, you must find me by my other names.
Mm.
Lucy says, will we ever see you again? Oh, yeah, but you must find me by my other names.
Mm.
This practice,
So even in the routine, even in the practice, God's going to shake that up once in a while, or he can.
Yeah. And I think it lends itself to the romance, actually, as I've been finishing up King Me and excited about the new year. This chapter on the queen and relationships with a woman for a man and romance. And I really enjoyed the research probably as much as I did the writing. This is just a chapter. It's not the book. It's a section in the chapter about romance. And to be in a romance is to pursue and be pursued by another. That's what romance is. And so let's take a break, come back to this point. I want our listeners to hear, what if you could put your heart in a position? What if you could put your mind and soul in a position to be pursued by God? I think that's what we're after. And at the same time, to best pursue God.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We'll be right back on the Exploring More podcast. Hey, friends and allies of Exploring More podcast. We wanted to bring some attention to some of our free downloadable resources on our Zoweh website. First, there's a 14-day devotional on being fathered by God. This is the same devotional that you can get a PDF download on our website. You also can find on the YouVersion Bible app. Also, the 14-day devotional on the heart of a warrior, another great resource to walk through with men or in your own time alone with God. The last free download that we want to draw attention to is the biblical theology of the heart. Is the redeemed heart good? Is this piece of equipment that is so vital to living in the kingdom, is it good or is it not? Download the biblical theology of the heart to find out more. You can find these 3 resources and many other free downloads and free audio files on our website at www.zoweh.org. All right, welcome back, listeners, to the Exploring More podcast, 2-part podcast series on this time of year, solitude, quiet, reflection. What's the best kind of dinner? A drive-through or a candlelight?
Right. Slow food, 3.5 hours. Right.
And conversation,
yeah.
and a candle, putting your fork down between bites, because it's not about the food and consumption. It's about the person that you're with. That's romance. And so I would encourage all of us, myself included, what if 2022 could be a year of romance? A year of pursuing God and being pursued by God, positioning yourself for that.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have a list of books that we're recommending to folks. If you want a master's degree in what Zoweh believes, here's this list of books. And one of them is The Sacred Romance by Brent Curtis. Yeah. And so if you listeners are intrigued by that idea of being in a romance with God, I highly recommend that book. You could study that for the year.
Yeah, and it's a great one to go back to if you have read it, just to revisit it. But
I love that one.
In Heart of a Warrior and in King Me, these are themes that don't go away. Being the beloved, having a father that's watching out for you, having a king, a savior, a shepherd who's caring for you, and a spirit that's with you always.
Yeah.
This is why the sacred romance is so important. And I want to go back and tie it in again, SJ. Are we making the kind of conscious thoughts and efforts to find spaces conducive for romance, conducive for being pursued. It's just very hard to hear God living in the drive-thru, living in that 3-day window.
Trying to hork down a Chick-fil-A sandwich while you're driving in traffic.
I mean, you can get some sustenance that way.
You can survive, but it's not nutrition.
I mean, there's a number of times when slowing down, slow food eating, it's amazing how you can tell how wired you are when you try to do that and it feels either frustrating or inconvenient, or when is this over, or I've got crap to do.
Yeah,
you know,
man.
If that starts coming up in the unruliness of your mind, then there's probably something in the routines of your life that need attention.
Mm-hmm.
Because this isn't easy to do until it is.
Yeah.
Until it becomes easy to do. And that's why I think New Year's is such a great time. Make some resolutions. Try. Set out in a direction. What do you want?
Yeah, what's the worst thing that can happen, right? The worst thing that can happen is you make a resolution and then somehow, for some reason, you feel discouraged because you couldn't pull it off, right?
And then one in a row. Get that one.
That's right. Go back to the one in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Get started again.
And one of the things, too, that occurs to me, Michael, and then we can wrap this episode up, I think. The greatest encouragement you get when you start a new tradition, a new resolution, a new habit, a new endeavor is to start to see results.
Right.
And I'm promising you, listeners, if you will engage with this and continue to engage with it, you will see results. You will. It just requires, like all of these things that Michael's talking about, you know, the quieting of your mind, making a space, carving out the time and being intentional. Intentionality requires that. But you will see them.
Yeah, I like that. I like it a lot because this word is funny. Regularity. We're after regular and regularity, and not necessarily that tight space of daily, every day. I know we can shoot for that, but if you can get 5 days, 6 days a week, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
4 days, you're
3 or 4.
You're still on the good side. So I have these journals, and have you been in my office at home if I showed you the journals?
Oh, yeah.
There are 30 journals now lined up on the top shelf, going back to 1989.
Wow.
I didn't intend to do that. It's just what happens over time.
Yeah.
You know, so I think when you speak about celebrating 5 in a row, celebrating 7 out of 10, we tend to err on the side of, I can't do anything consistently. Well, wait a minute. What's your definition of consistent?
Right. You're shooting 7 out of 10. You're not missing 3 out of 10.
And the accusation of, you're not doing this well. You're not doing this right. I feel like we actually impose that kind of attitude on God, that he's just kind of waiting for you to prove him right that he's disappointed.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
You know it's coming.
But to see some of these routines accomplished, they're going to take time. They're opposed. If you're going to pursue intimacy, romance with God, if you're going to position yourself, there will be things that come at it because there's an enemy that would rather you not find any success in connecting with God, connecting with your own heart, connecting with your desires, and answering these questions. And we'll leave this podcast with, those are the questions. What do you want? What do you long for? What do you hope for? What happened this year?
That's a great one.
That was good. Yeah, what happened this year? I'd love a do-over. I'd like to have that moment over again. So the reflection and then the forecasting. Where do I want to be in a week or two? Where do I want to be in a few months? What does it look like, God, to be more intimate with you? What happens is people think the answer to that is spend more time with God. I actually think the answer is pay attention more to God.
Agreed.
That 30-minute quiet time, that's okay. But what if you could experience God in the woods, in the truck, in the car? Turn off the podcast after you've listened to this one. Turn off the music, turn off the worship.
Right.
And create stillness, quiet. For those of us who are out of practice, it'll be a little unnerving. until it's not.
Until it's not. That's right.
And you'll find that your heart longs for it.
Yeah.
And then you won't have to try to make the space. You'll run to that space.
Right. You'll be hungry for it.
You're hungry. Yes. Good word. Hungry for it. So we hope that this New Year's would be one that probably has more clarity for you in your walk with God than maybe any year before, by just maybe considering what might it look like to be still and know that he is God. What would he say to you if you were still? What would you ask if you were invited? And see how that goes. See where that goes.
Yeah. I think about Jesus. What is it you want from me? Yeah. He asked that several times.
Yeah.
In a number of different ways. So, listeners, we're hopeful for our coming year. We're hopeful for your coming year. We're filled with hope. Yeah. I love the Christmas season comes right before the new year, right? To fill you with hope for what's on the horizon. And we hope you're experiencing that too. If you've got questions for us about this podcast or any other thing about Zoweh, just shoot us an email, exploringmore@zoweh.org. And give us a rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. It helps us to be found. It helps get the message out there.
Yeah, really good. We appreciate that. So, hey, Happy New Year, friends and allies. We'll see you in 2022 and talk a little more in the next podcast as we hit January with the mission of life.
Yeah.
What is the mission of life? And I think the New Year's a great time to talk about that, not only for Zoweh, but let's share a little bit, SJ, because we're going to do what we've asked our listeners to do and spend that time. Our team's going to spend that time into New Year's. God, what do you have for me?
Right.
Because when we come together as a team, those become really defining for what do you have for us. So, Happy New Year, friends and allies.
Yeah.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.
Sorry, Brooke and Serena. Man, I've been dying to do that. It's good grief, man.
All right.
Maybe in the new year we have to just let that go and say, hey, occasionally we're going to clear our throats.
Yeah,
it's okay.
It's snotty time.
Yeah. Well, or whatever.
Hacking.